The legend of Blackwood Asylum. Blackwood Asylum had stood for over a century, an ominous structure looming over the edge of town like a forgotten relic of a darker time. Once a place meant to heal the broken minds of society, it had instead become a breeding ground for suffering. Tales of mistreatment, unethical experiments, and even deaths had long plagued its history. When it was finally shut down, the asylum was left to decay, its halls abandoned but never truly empty. For decades, thrill seekers and urban explorers had ventured inside, each returning with chilling stories of strange noises, flickering lights, and shadowy figures. Some claimed they felt unseen hands brushing against their skin. Others swore they heard whispers calling their names. The asylum had developed a sinister reputation, one that kept most sane people far away. But curiosity is a dangerous thing. The dare. It started as a simple dare. A group of 5 friends, Mike, Lisa, Jake, Emily, and Chris, decided to test their courage by spending a night inside Blackwood Asylum. They had all heard the stories, but none truly believed in ghosts. To them, it was just another abandoned building, nothing more. Armed with flashlights, cameras, and a single rule: to stay together, they made their way inside just as the last rays of sunlight faded. The air was thick with dust, and the stench of mold filled their nostrils. The moment they crossed the threshold, an eerie silence settled around them, as if the very walls were holding their breath. The first signs. The entrance hall was vast, its high ceilings casting strange shadows in the dim light. Peeling paint curled from the walls, and old patient records lay scattered across the floor. The group moved cautiously, their laughter nervous but steady. Then, the first sign of something unnatural occurred. A door down the hallway slammed shut on its own. They all froze, exchanging uneasy glances. Probably just the wind, Mike muttered, though there was no breeze. As they pressed forward, they noticed the air growing colder. Emily shivered, wrapping her arms around herself. "Does anyone else feel that?" she whispered. Before anyone could answer, the faint sound of a woman crying echoed through the halls. The lost patient's room. Following the sound, they stumbled upon a patient's room that looked eerily untouched by time. A single bed sat in the center, its rusted frame creaking under an unseen weight. On the wall, the words "Help me" were scrawled in what looked like dry blood. Lisa stepped forward, brushing dust off an old journal resting on the nightstand. She hesitated before opening it, her breath catching in her throat as she read the first entry. "They watch us. They whisper at night. There is no escape." A sudden knock on the doorframe made her jump. They turned, expecting to see one of their friends, but there was no one there. The doctor's experiment. As they moved deeper into the asylum, they came across the medical wing. Old operating tables lay covered in dust, their restraints still intact. Shelves were filled with yellowed medical files detailing gruesome experiments. One name kept appearing over and over: Dr. Elias Grayson. According to the files, Dr. Grayson had conducted unauthorized procedures on patients, attempting to cure their ailments through radical and often cruel methods. Electroshock therapy, lobotomies, and sleep deprivation were common. Some patients had vanished altogether, their records mysteriously erased. Chris suddenly felt a chill and turned to leave, only to find the door had closed behind them on its own. The ghostly encounter. Panic set in, their flashlights flickered, and the temperature dropped even further. Then they heard it, a whisper right next to Lisa's ear. "You shouldn't be here." Lisa screamed, stumbling backward. The group turned their lights toward the far end of the room, where a faint figure stood, a woman in a tattered hospital gown, her face obscured by long, matted hair. She raised a bony hand and pointed toward the door. The moment they blinked, she was gone. The basement. Despite their growing fear, they pressed on. A staircase led them downward into the basement, where the worst of the asylum's horrors had taken place. Rusted gurneys lined the damp walls, and chains hung from the ceiling, swaying slightly as if disturbed by an unseen force. Jake noticed an old video recorder sitting on a table. He picked it up, pressing play. The screen flickered to life, revealing grainy footage of a patient strapped to a chair. Dr. Grayson stood beside him, a syringe in hand. "This will help you see," the doctor's voice rasped before the screen cut to static. A blood-curdling scream erupted from the hallway. The escape. They ran, hearts pounding, lungs burning. The asylum itself seemed to shift, corridors elongating and warping. Every turn led them deeper into the maze of darkness, as if the building had a will of its own. Doors slammed behind them, cutting off possible exits. Their flashlights flickered wildly, casting distorted shadows. Then came the voices, dozens of them, whispering, chanting, growing louder with each step. Lisa tripped, falling hard onto the cold, grimy floor. Something cold wrapped around her wrist, an unseen force dragging her back. She screamed as her friends yanked her forward, barely managing to pull her free. The entity hissed, the sound like nails on a chalkboard. Finally, the entrance loomed ahead. With one last desperate sprint, they burst outside. The moment they crossed the threshold, an oppressive silence fell. The asylum had let them go for now. The aftermath. They had escaped, but the asylum hadn't let them go completely. Each of them was plagued by nightmares, visions of gaunt figures watching from the darkness, voices whispering in the stillness of night. Lisa found bruises on her wrist, shaped like skeletal fingers. Jake's camera, though turned off, recorded hours of chilling whispers and screams. Emily refused to speak about that night. Chris moved away without a word. Mike became obsessed with researching Blackwood Asylum, only to vanish weeks later, his apartment left undisturbed. The only clue a single note on his desk. I see them now. The mark of the asylum. Lisa thought she had escaped the horrors of Blackwood Asylum, but the asylum had left something behind. A week after their terrifying ordeal, she noticed something odd, a faint mark on her wrist, right where the unseen force had grabbed her. At first, it looked like nothing more than a bruise, but each day it grew darker, forming twisted, indecipherable symbols. She tried scrubbing it off, but it wouldn't fade. The mark pulsed beneath her skin, almost as if it were alive. When she searched online, nothing matched the strange symbols. Desperate for answers, she called Jake, but his phone went straight to voicemail. Chris had already disappeared, and Emily refused to talk about that night. One night, as Lisa was studying the symbols in her bathroom mirror, the lights flickered. A deep, rattling whisper filled the air. "You are one of us now." The final warning. Months later, Lisa received a package in the mail. There was no return address, only a single item inside. The journal she had found in the asylum. She flipped to the last page, where new words had appeared in fresh, wet ink. "You shouldn't have left." A cold wind blew through her apartment, rattling the windows. Then, a soft whisper caressed her ear. "We are still here." Her mirror cracked. Lisa knew then she was never truly free. Thank you guys for watching. If you want more videos like this, make sure to like the video and hit the subscribe button, and we'll see you in the next video.